Hey, we're live on the
Hello,
internet,
everyone.
people. Well, welcome to your therapy session, everyone.
Oh, going the wrong way.
So we've got a new feature, haven't we, Wendy?
Oh yes,
Yeah.
could be interesting.
I know, yeah. So Wendy can take over my screen now, and she can write. So if you see any very interesting comments from Roger Yates in the chats, it won't be me.
I know, and the blah blah. Just to clear up, the blah blah wasn't referring to anyone's comments or anything. It was literally I was doing a test to see if I could suddenly write a comment, which was really exciting for me. And I just did a test, but it came out blah blah, and then I realised it was under Roger's name anyway. So trying to get Roger into trouble.
Yeah, I don't know why it does that though. There's been a comment in for ages and ages, and I confess I don't know this study, but it looks interesting. And funny enough, the issue of meat and masculinity comes up today. It's one of the things, because I've kind of slung together a slideshow which I'm going to go through with everybody's help. And but as ever, we really want a lot of participation because it's a subject that we all know about. And so, do kind of chime in, and we'll kind of just switch back and forwards from the presentation back to the chat, as it were. So who have we got in the house, as they say?
We've got Rose, and so hey Rose, we've got Joanna and Sam. Hey to you both. We've got Dave and Deb and Mike, Jennifer, vegan songstress, Theodore, and that's
another
Dave coming in again. Another Dave, but
another
Dave?
Another Dave.
And another Ronnie. No, there's only one Ronnie.
Oh, that's true.
As we know.
Yeah.
Hey Ronnie. So yeah, do say hello, everyone. If you're in the chat, say hello.
How difficult the world would be if there was more than one Ronnie Lee, hey?
I think it would be great. Personally.
Hello, Linda. Hello.
Since you mentioned therapy, Roger, I just want to make clear that none of us, although we're going to explore issues that cause anxiety to many vegans, we are not mental health professionals. So if people are feeling really gloom or they feel that they cannot cope, it's a very good idea to ask for professional help.
Yes, that's a good... yeah, that gets us off all the hooks that we need to get off of, I think. But you can trust me, people, because I'm a doctor. So
as you can tell you're a doctor because of the moustache.
Oh yes, I want to mention. I don't know whether. Oh yes, leaps and bounds. Deb says. So yeah. So this is for Movember. I've never had a tash before, and I can't say I quite like it very much. Still makes me look as though I'm 300 years old. So I don't think it's going to last too long, but it's for the Back into Daylight Animal Sanctuary. So if you want to support that, I think you can just donate, go to their website and just donate, and maybe put a little note saying, because of Roger's moustache. Or I think that you can go to their Facebook page. But when I tried it, it's actually quite difficult to find the fundraiser. So I'm sure you more technical people than I will work it out a lot better than I can. So
there was an event created by Ryan, I believe.
Yeah, Ryan Anderson, I think. Yeah. So I think you might have to look Ryan Anderson up on his personal page. I think maybe I should have copied that to my
link. Yeah, if you can grab that, Roger, you can put it in there. That'll be easy for people if they want to donate. And if they donate double, does that mean yeah, I want to see that. I want to see the twirly bits at the end.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah, come on. Yeah, Salvador Dali. Yeah.
You can catch your breadcrumbs in it. Save them for later.
Yeah, that'd be quite useful, wouldn't it? Yeah, kind of
a little snack.
That's me pudding. Me pudding. Right, people. So really, we're looking at what it's like to be a vegan in a non-vegan world, because I think we're all kind of aware that it's not easy. But perhaps it's also not clear about how difficult it is for some people. So we're going to go through a few things in order to kind of try to illustrate that. And so let me just add this to the stream, and then that should go full size. Yeah, there we go.
Hi, Bernie and Amber, by the way, you've just joined us as well. And did you say hello to Linda and Anne? Roger, sorry, I missed that. And Linda and Anne, if you didn't get a hello. Nice to see everyone.
Yes. Jennifer's saying that it's cute and funny. I think that's a reference to my mustache, I think. So, okay, now, so we're going to start off with just a few kind of memes and things like signs and stuff that we all kind of know about. Now, I think the suggestion from the research is that this actually plays quite an important role in people's attitude to starting to live vegan and then stopping living vegan, because we do know that the kind of fall off rate, Reagan's revolving door, is quite large. I mean, we talked about 80%. I mean, that's a heck of a lot. 8 out of every 10 people that join our movement leave it. And the reasons for that are quite complicated, not least because not all of those who join are kind of vegans, but there is still quite a fall off rate. And I think that this session today will kind of explore that a little bit in terms of research. There's quite a bit of new research which is going to come up. So the first one, vegetarians live up to 9 years longer than meat eaters. 9 horrible, worthless, baconless years. Which is, I mean, how extreme is that? Kind of worthless, baconless years. I mean, I never quite understood what this thing about bacon is. I do know, and I bet Nella and Wendy, I bet you've had this. Some people said to me, well, I can understand going vegan except for bacon. I mean, they seem to think that bacon is some kind of magical thing that everybody's got to have. So I don't.
I've never got it either. I've never got it.
I never get that. It's kind of like, almost like surely if you pass a shop or a cafe and you can smell bacon, that's going to kind of make your knees go all wobbly and everything. And I've never understood that kind of thing.
It makes me want to throw up.
I know, yeah, yeah. It's because they don't understand that once you get a vegan mindset, you no longer see it as food. And so therefore, that's not how you orientate towards it. It's not food. And so therefore, that's not what you're thinking. You're thinking, there's a dead animal. Or you're thinking that smells horrible. Because like what they think is lovely, we tend to think is pretty horrible. The top right one, the Times co-writer has mentioned she's vegan today 6 times. I've asked 0. So that's a common kind of play on this thing about don't you worry. The research suggests, because we were talking about this, I think last week, Wendy, the research suggests that this is not actually true. That the idea that they've got this stereotype that vegans go up to people and go, "Hi, hello there, I'm vegan." I'm like, who's ever done that? I mean, so.
I was thinking of getting it tattooed on my forehead just to save all that. Save the awkwardness, just put it out.
Wear one of those beanies like everybody else and be done with. The bottom one is obviously a kind of another play on words and the same type of thing. This is a very old one. Ronnie and a few others in the chat will recognize this. Vegetarian is an old Indian word for bad hunter. And I mean, that one's been going around forever, that one. This is another 3 one. The first one is difficult to see a little bit, I think. It's because it's a shop window. In fact, you can see the person taking the thing in the reflection. So it's Windsor Meat, established in 1918. That's when the war started, wasn't it? Did you know vegans live 15 years longer because they aren't invited anywhere fun or dangerous? Instead, they stay at home crying and drinking, being careful not to cry into the drink because tears are a product of animal suffering. The more you know. So that hilarious that hilarious
Hang
statement.
on, just sew my sides up, they're splitting a little bit.
I know, yeah. Absolutely hilarious, isn't it? Now, a bit more seriously. Sorry, Wendy.
No, sorry, I was just still in shock and awe at that little
Yeah, pathetic, isn't it?
Earl of Wisdom there.
I know, yeah. The top right is a bit more serious. This is a very recent thing. I think it was from Total Liberation Network, I think, is a Facebook group. So I eliminated the names and everything. But basically it was kind of, I'm not coping too well. And I think this is what we're getting at, in a sense that for some people, being vegan in a non-vegan world is very, very stressful. And the research that we're about to see talks about anxiety and all the strategies that vegans and non-vegans try to kind of bring into being in order to kind of cope with it. And then the bottom one is from Have I Got News for You, which is a recent one. Vegan sausage rolls hit by supply chain disruption due to widespread wood, chip, and cardboard shortages.
Now that one, if you were talking about the 80s, could have actually been true. Maybe not so much now. But 90s, 80s, 90s vegan food could have been.
I would like to hear from the people watching this sarcasm, the fact that we're getting mocked all the time. Usually people sad or more timid or angry, especially in the first years they started living vegan. For me, it was always anger. It didn't stop me from saying I'm vegan. It didn't stop me from talking about other animals. But I understand that it can be very intimidating for some people. So I would like to hear your views on that.
Yeah. For me, it was anger and depression. I know when I was about 3 years in, I went in with sabbing, and sometimes we used to sab 3 times a week. And sometimes I used to sab on my own on a motorbike, and I used to remember on the days when we weren't sabbing, but I knew the hunts were out. I was really depressed. I would be praying for really bad weather and stuff, and just to kind of, as it were, piss off the enemy type thing. But that was my lowest point, and I was about 2-3 years in then, and I think it's a pattern that I've kind of identified, that people are all kind of, yeah, let's do it, 2 years hence we'll have done it type thing. Then you realize it's not going to be like that, and then you get a little bit down, and then you come to a realization that it's a bit of a long haul. So I think that's a pattern that I think is probably quite common. I don't know if it applies to you, Wendy, or Nella, or anybody in the chat, really, but that's what I've seen anyway.
I found that I don't remember the kind of 3-year point or anything like that specifically, but I feel like my emotions and the kind of dips, like going into that depression or times of when you're feeling quite low, I find it hasn't been like linear, like, oh, I've had a big dip and then I'm like coming up the other side. No, it's kind of a constant, like I just have days or weeks I feel really resilient and I can just keep going, and everything comes up and you think, yeah, it's fine. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh no, I feel like I'm going down and I'm going to have to limit my exposure. I'm going to have to really take care of myself more and make sure I don't say yes to too much, and then kind of have to work through it that way. And then it just kind of goes in waves for me, I think, because I still get those drops now and then come up and down, I suppose.
What do you think? Yeah, Nella, what about you?
I still get the ups and downs too. I'm better at coping with them now. I remember that at that point in time, 2 or 3 years after going vegan, I felt very lonely. So I was trying to find other vegans in my area. Until then, I knew only one other vegan person, and that coincided with the moment I started doing activism, and that helped me a lot, really.
Yeah, well, that's what kind of Ronnie's saying, isn't it? And I agree with that. And in fact, funny enough, that's really how we're going to end today if we get to the end of the presentation.
Ronnie's jumping ahead. Can I just have like a little moment here, because I'm just about to bring up a comment for the first time and I'm quite excited about it. And
well, don't forget, I can turn it off again.
I know. I find this really interesting because I was thinking about this. I was thinking about the challenges of veganism now compared to when, say, I went vegan, when Nella might have gone vegan, you, Roger, as well, and Ronnie in the chat, and I know he's been vegan forever, and other people in the chat. We've all gone vegan at different times with a different landscape of veganism. And I was trying to think of the differences from kind of now to then, and I was thinking, like, one of the things now which we're already looking at is that backlash, the anti-veganism, and like Dave said, the constant attacks means that we're becoming more significant. And I think that's really true, because when I look back to going vegan, my problem wasn't anti-veganism at all. It's people not bloody knowing what vegan was at all, like not even knowing the word, not really understanding what it was, even in terms of dietary aspects. People would just say, vegan, what's that? And you'd have to kind of explain even just the dietary aspects of, well, like, I don't consume this, or partake in this. And people would just not have a clue and just ask you really strange questions. So it's really changed. I think the challenges that people are facing now as they go vegan are very different to maybe when when any of us went vegan in years gone by. I think it's changing the landscape all the time. It's interesting though.
Just I want to mention there is a comment by BC asking if anyone has read Aftershock by Patrice Jones. And since it was mentioned, it's a great book and it's highly recommended.
Yeah, got it. Oh, you might have found that one. Yeah, it's really great. I recommend any of Patrice's work, quite frankly. But yeah, that's really great.
Yeah, that actually, there's a new video, isn't there? When there was a kind of tribute to the work of Patrice, which is online now, and it's really worth checking out, I think.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's really inspiring, that event. Very much so.
Yeah, BC says my partner and I went vegan together. That helps. Yeah, that's obviously.
And that's another aspect, because if you go vegan with your significant other, that's great. But if you don't, and just one of in the couple goes vegan, or you are single and then you meet someone, this is also a strain for people.
Yeah, I think I must count myself as quite lucky in that respect, because I've always been around vegans in one way or another, and my sister went vegan. She claimed in 1978, but it was really 1982. But we'd gone vegan when we were apart. She'd gone off to university, and I'd gone off I was a projectionist at the time. And when we met in the early 80s, we've both discovered that we're both vegan, independently of each other, because we're not particularly close family, so we weren't in touch. So that was interesting. And then my mother went kind of vegan in her 60s. But then again, I was her main carer at the time, so she didn't have much of a choice. So, right, let's move on then. This is the next bit is some work from Matthew Cole. Matthew is one of the sociologists looking at the Donald Watson archive at the moment, with Kate Stewart and someone else who shamefully I always forget their name, so apologies to that person that I don't know your name of. But in the earlier work, this is 2009. This is actually from The Vegan, so you can look at this online. It's in that kind of issue website, ISSUU, and then you got all the back copies of The Vegan, right to 1944. 1944, Jennifer. So this is the kind of article that led to this in a way, because this is 2011. The article in the Vegan was 2009, but the research is 2007. If all that makes sense. So it comes with this idea of looking at the newspapers for one particular year, which was 2007, and they came up with this phrase called vegophobia, which I'm sure that vegan teacher thinks that she made that up, but she didn't. But some of the kind of findings are about. We're talking about. Well, these are conclusions, really. So I'm going to go to conclusion and then back again. So they're talking about stereotypes. They talk about silencing, and they say, and this is very significant for them, they're saying that the absence of a focus on the ethics is not doing us kind of any favors, if you like. So the absence of discourse about animal rights and animal liberation in the mass media is quite significant, in the sense that you can't find it very often. And also they think that therefore damages the movement, because it kind of gives people the wrong idea about what veganism is all about. Coverage is usually about food, and so no wonder people get the idea that veganism is a diet. And also, of course, that means that journalists get the idea that veganism is a diet, and so it kind of, you know, becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy in some ways. And the authors recommend a reassertion that veganism is animal liberation, and is that little bit at the bottom, kind of focusing on healthy lifestyle, maybe unwise. So they've definitely got a kind of thing about what we really need to do is get people to understand, first and foremost, that veganism is a philosophy. It's all full of ethics. That's the reason most people do it. And then the dietary thing is kind of follows the philosophy kind of thing. So that would be quite an interesting thing.
And it's interesting, isn't it? Because I don't know if we're coming to this later on in the slides, Roger, but one of the things that has been found in some studies, and it might be mentioned in the article that we've been looking at, is that in studies, people who are personally motivated vegans, like for health reasons, tend to be more liked by non-vegans than those who are ethically motivated. So people have more of a pushback against vegans when they're citing kind of moral reasons, and whether, you know, when it's for other animals rather than, oh, it's for my health or the environment. Isn't that really interesting?
Yeah, and what the research is going to suggest, as we will go on to that actually, which is that some ethical vegans actually don't tell people the real reason why they're vegan. They'll say it's for selfish reasons, because that's easier for the other side to hear, as it were. So they'll kind of do that to lower everyone's anxiety. So if it becomes known that there's a vegan in the house, as it were, and they go, well, why is that? And they go, oh, well, it's for health, or I've got allergies or something, then that kind of diffuses the potential for kind of anxiety on both sides. That's what the research
it's expected, though, isn't it? I mean, when you say that I'm a vegan for health reasons, for example, the non-vegans not feel threatened or judged, because you are not actually implying that they're doing something wrong. You just do something for your own health. So
that's right, yeah. And so that's what in my notes it says that the non-vegans love it when the vegans say that, because it, you know, that's it. That's just so it's easy for them to accept. It doesn't create any moral questions in their minds, and then you can move on and enjoy the rest of the evening. If it was, in fact, there is a clip, not a clip, but a kind of some stills from a TV show where at the dinner table a woman's making moral points about veganism, and that was completely disruptive. Whereas if she'd have gone, oh yeah, it's because I've got allergies or whatever, it wouldn't have been. So that's to come. What we've got in this slide, I'm not going to read it out, is the idea that vegans are ridiculed. This again is in the mass media here. That veganism, the diet, is suggested to be difficult or even impossible sometimes. That there are a lot of stereotypes, again, like aesthetics. That it's a fad diet. That vegans are overly sentimental, which goes back to Rousseau, I believe, which, you know, centuries ago. And so they're sentimental and or also extreme. And so there's these kind of ideas bouncing around. This problem of lack of emphasis on vegan ethics, they're saying, again, the writers, misrepresents vegans and veganism. And so everybody's getting misled within the mass media, the journalists, the public, you know, so in terms of the public being able to assess the value of vegan philosophy, it's very difficult because they hardly ever hear it. So if they do hear something about vegans, it's about diet and stuff, and so that's where it ends for them, you know. And unless there's somebody to guide them along, or they do it themselves and connect a few dots, you know, or do a bit of further research, they're not going to engage with the ethics. And so this is a movement issue for sure. So people are not presented with the ethics, so they cannot evaluate them. And they say most seriously, it obscures the oppression of other animals when people go on about veganism as...
Do you know, this is interesting, actually, because as you're saying this, I'm thinking about sort of anti-veganism and how vegans are perceived and portrayed in the media now. And it's that view of, you know, people being intolerably, did I say that all right? Intolerably vocal about veganism. They're moralistic and they're judgmental, pushing views onto other people, maybe militant, self-righteous, judgmental, all of these things people say about vegans. But why would non-vegans even think those things about vegans if they didn't relate it to ethics and morality? Do you know what I mean? There would be no reason for all of those anti-vegan judgments if they didn't know deep down and have an understanding that it is about ethics.
Yeah, I think this is to do with frequency, though. I mean, so I think they know it's there, but there's almost like a connivance and a conspiracy to kind of keep it down, you know, and stop it rising to the fore. And the non-vegans have got an interest in doing it, and sometimes the research is suggesting that some types of vegans have got an interest in doing it as well, which is the thing that kind of is very frustrating for the activist vegans. So I think we'll see a lot of that. This bit, obviously, I'm not going to read this out, but this bit is all about. I've just picked out one example from Matthew and Karen's work here, and this is the focus on Heather Mills, and there was a big load of rubbish going on in the media about Heather Mills at one point. Oh, are you just flashing those up, or do we want to engage with them?
Sorry, no, I had the wrong one then. I'm still practicing.
You're just playing with your new toy, aren't you, Wendy? That's right.
I am a little bit. No, there was a comment there that I thought was relevant on that, and then it disappeared, and I got the wrong one. So.
Yeah, sometimes you can go to click on it, and it moves.
And it moves.
So you put the wrong one up. So here, the idea was that Heather Mills was characterized as jealous of Linda McCartney, and then there was a whole thing about rat milk, and the rat milk thing was the fact that the mass media deliberately misunderstood what Heather Mills was saying. She was basically saying that thing about, you know, that some of the plant-based doctors say, well, you know, you don't need cow's milk in the same way you don't need rat milk and you don't need, you know, cat milk and this kind of stuff. So she was giving a version of that, and they deliberately misread it. And it said in the research that only the Daily Mail clarified the issue. All the others just cited it, you know. And also deliberately, if you like. And stereotypes again. That's I'm jumping ahead there. So only the Daily Star comic, as I put, yeah. And then this ableism right at the bottom. You see this terrible ableism. She was called by the Daily Star the eye-rolling crazy amputee. So, yeah. I was going to issue a content warning and I always forget, so apologies for that. Now, this is moving to the more recent research, and I'll give the credit at the end. And I have to confess that I was a little bit dismissive of this. So this is Rebecca Gregson's research. Yeah, and it's for the FAR Society, spelled FHAIR. And so it's pretty new, and there's lots of internal links which are really interesting. So as I confessed to Wendy and Nella this morning, I kind of took me a while to kind of see that this was quite a useful and interesting piece, because it didn't start very well for me. As you can see, this is the start of it. For as long as meat-free diets have existed, so it started talking about the diets, which put me off a little bit. And then you've got the vegan thing, which anybody who knows me knows that I actually hate that word, possibly as much as mercy. So
not quite.
Not quite. No, right. It'd be hard to dislike it that much. But VEG*NS, and the problem with that, of course, is that the fact that this has been the tradition of research about what they sometimes call meat avoiders. that they conflate vegetarians and vegans together in the research, and so consequently it's always been quite misleading. Anyway, it's the early stereotypes again come up in this, that vegans are described as cadaverous or feeble, and again a bit of ableism, half crazed. The research that cited that bit there in green, that is actually the Cole Morgan paper. And then the insert is that apparently vegan hate crimes have gone up since that court ruling, to suggest that veganism is now a philosophical belief. And if you can see just under I know it's very small, just underneath the picture, it says, it has been ruled to be a philosophical belief to be protected. And you see, that's the kind of phrase you don't get very often about veganism in the mass media, you know. So that's the kind of thing, I suppose, that we need more
I thought I like this article since the beginning, and the reason I like it so much is that what the researcher describes rings really true to me about people going vegan today. So maybe there are a few differences that have to do with you know, the age. People that are not vocal, people that are a little intimidated, they succumb to peer pressure. All these I've seen happening around me.
Yeah, yeah. I think we probably, when you think about the people that you know or the people you have known, I think everybody's gonna kind of know of these kind of things. So I mean, some people, even when they kind of do outreach, you know, you can still see different personalities there. Some people are very shy, and they like to keep in the background, you know, and other people just don't say anything, but they feel as though they ought to be there to give kind of moral support or something like that. So I suppose we're talking about different folks, aren't we, and stuff. So, you know, it's inevitable in that way. But it also goes to show how complex human beings are on a kind of social, psychological level. This one is from 2015, and it talks about 3 different studies. It's about negativity towards vegans. Study number 1, vegans viewed negatively, the same or even worse than other groups that face prejudice. So vegans come at the top of the kind of who do you dislike lists. The second study, in terms of food groups, vegans are seen more negatively than, say, for example, gluten-free persons. And what you said before, Wendy, in that research, ethical vegans came out the worst of all of those. And so the more ethical you were, the more hated you were, if you like, in this research. The third one is talking about that the vegans themselves reported negativity. It does say in relation to their diet there, but and this kind of manifestation of hatred is seen online now. This is a Reddit group called Against the Cult of Veganism, and then there is a Facebook group, and this is where that masculinity thing comes in that I mentioned at the beginning, Anti-Vegan League. So, I mean, I don't know if you're seeing this, kind of a little bit of transphobia thrown in, and of course the usual bullshit about masculinity and meat.
Actually, that's what Jonah mentioned right at the start, wasn't
that's
it?
Right, yeah.
The comment right at the beginning was talking about this. And Laura Schleifer did, I didn't catch it, I need to catch up on it, but Laura Schleifer did a whole talk on this the other day. Nella, did you catch it?
Yes, it was a great one.
The one about masculinity, not the liberation one.
No, I attended the liberation one.
There was one just before that she did on this whole subject, and I think it will be really interesting on kind of masculinity and things like that. But yeah, it is interesting, isn't it?
I don't know if you can see that, but the one far left seems to be holding a banana, so I'm sure he must have got shot later. So that's not very masculine, is it? Eating a banana. So, but it's just interesting, isn't it?
Very phallic, though.
Yeah, well, there is that, I suppose. Yeah, guess that's probably what they're thinking of.
The interesting stuff is that vegans get mocked by non-vegans, by the media, generally by society, and by other vegans. I don't know which one is more painful for people. I mean, the fact that non-vegans are aggressive toward us, or that other vegans are so willing to make fun or judge, or
Make fun on what grounds?
Not fun, but being mean. For example, I got a message from a young person who went vegan recently, and they were telling that they are the only vegan in their household, which makes the situation very difficult for them. And they have only one vegan friend, and that vegan friend is kind of aggressive towards them because they find them not active enough and not vocal enough. So you have a person that just went vegan and they are trying to to find their footing, and at the same time they have to deal not only with non-vegans, but with other vegans that are feeling that they are not good enough.
Yeah. Well, at the end of this, that's one of the conclusions that come out of this kind of review of this research, in the sense that if we were more communal with each other, it would be a great help. It would help the silent vegans to become more vocal, and it would help the people who leave not leave. So, and that would also, the research suggests, because there's this conflation that goes on, so that's the same about vegans' attitudes to vegetarians. And I've always said that veganism contains a critique of vegetarianism, but we shouldn't necessarily attack vegetarians too much. But I don't know. In the last 18 months, I've seen a lot of attacks on vegetarians from vegans, and so I'm not quite sure how that helps. In fact, as you'll see coming up, when vegetarians are in the company of vegans, their anxiety level goes up. So, I mean, like, you might go good, but, is it or not? It's just quite interesting. This bit is 2001 research, and interesting title here: Moral Rebels and Dietary Deviants. The deviant thing is interesting. It brings into kind of criminological discourse in that. Vegans perceived to be moral, but they're seen negatively because of that. And so that's the thing about kind of inducing guilt. The vegan songstress on TikTok gets a lot of stuff about, you're forcing me to be vegan, and she always says, well, how can I do that? But they're obviously feeling something going on, because a lot of them say, I don't care, and yet they're there making that comment on a vegan thread. And so there's a reason for them to be there. And so our interaction with non-vegans can create anxiety within the non-vegans, or guilt. Now, I'm not claiming that that's not good or even necessary. I'm just saying that seems to be what's going on. It also seems that the vegans are characterized as eccentric, but that could be a defense mechanism. And that's where the deviant bit comes in, focusing on the deviancy of veganism, kind of breaking all the social rules because they're moralistic, as you were saying before, Wendy. And because of that, they're socially unattractive. And so it's not something to be particularly associated with. And in fact, we'll see later that people will take steps to kind of distance themselves from vegans in a couple of ways. This is that TV example that I was talking about, and this is from a program I've never seen, When I Met Your Mother. So I presume it's a kind of frenzy type comedy type thing, I suppose. So you won't be able to read it because it's very blurred, but the guy at the top saying, the lamb here is supposed to be great. And then the woman says, I'm a vegan. I wish I could cut out the moral something or other. Anyway, she's basically saying that I wish I didn't have to think about that eating animals is murder. I guess that you're stronger than I am, or I'm less strong than you, and he says that's because you need protein. So that was the kind of hilarious joke in the program. But apparently this is quite common in quite a lot of these kind of things. And this is the comments underneath the YouTube video. Nothing to see here in the comment section. As usual, vegans can't take a joke. Vegans can't even take a chicken nugget. Why would you expect them to be able to take a joke? I mean, I don't like eating animals, but I can't help it. They're so delicious. Besides, I don't like veggies except carrots, maybe some potatoes. Now that one there, that third one, is something that is cropping up on TikTok all the time. That there's this new kind of wave of people saying that they've got reasons why they can't digest vegetables at all, and their doctor is kind of saying if you try to live on a plant-based diet, you're going to die and all this kind of stuff. And then the really interesting one from my point of view as a sociologist who's done the sociology of humor is that bottom one. Said, it's White Dragon, I am vegan and found this funny. Even comments against vegans which are funny, lols. And so that could be interpreted in a couple of ways, you know, kind of basically saying, well, I'm a vegan, but I've got a sense of humor, which is the accusation at the top. You know, like it says in the sociology of humor that saying you have no sense of humor is not an observation, it's an accusation. And so there's a vegan going, well, actually, yeah, I'm one of these with a sense of humor, so don't kind of write us all off, type of thing. And
that's
then
a funny
also,
thing about. I was going to say about humor though, is quite a funny thing about humor, isn't it? Because I think we do need to have a sense of humor. I think humor is one of the things that gets me through life, basically, especially through all the trauma and everything that we do go through. Having that sense of humor does help, but I suppose it's where is the boundary, where's the line? And I feel like I can laugh at myself, but I can't laugh about the oppression of others, other animals. So I feel like if I'm the butt of the joke and it's me and that's fine, I can take that. But if it then goes into you're actually laughing about this person being killed and slaughtered and all this stuff, then I don't find that funny. So I suppose it's where is the fun in the joke, really? Who's the butt of the joke?
You know what this reminds me of? I mean, of guys making a sexist joke, and when you call them out, they say you don't have humor, you don't have a sense of humor. And
right,
yeah. Humor, it's the means to oppress others. This easygoing, you know, oppression, everyday thing, just humor. Just a joke.
Yeah, that's one of the strongest things, because one thing that humor does is create in groups and out groups. It's one of the main things it does. And so when you call somebody out, because normally if you've got a group of guys and someone makes a sexist joke, they don't normally get called out. But if they do, then they would just come back with, I was only joking. Which again happens ironically on TikTok. Sometimes if you reply to somebody and say, well, what follows from that? You know, what moral point are you making? And they go, oh, I was only joking. It's kind of like a really kind of easy get out clause, because it kind of knocks the ball back into your court. Kind of, well, I was only joking. Does that mean you don't have a sense of humor? So it's defensive and it's also aggressive at the same time. It's a very kind of useful kind of social thing to happen. You know, oh, I was only joking. It sounds very innocent thing to say, but it's actually full of kind of power in a way, you know. So this is the Vegan Review. This is 2021, and this is looking at all kinds of movies and TV shows. And so you've obviously got the militant vegan. The most common stereotype of vegans is that they're obsessed with the diet, conserving the environment, and are aggressive to meat eaters. That vegan food is distasteful. The hippie stereotype comes in. Hypocrites. Apparently, this is one of the main themes in the TV shows in particular. I don't know about the movies, but in the TV shows, vegan characters either give up their vegan diet or secretly have cravings for animal-based products. And we're going to see that there's some empirical evidence to suggest that that's true in a minute. And so they love the idea. I was on a TV show in in Ireland, and the woman next to me said that they had vegans at their guest house, and that their I think it was their lamb salad was so incredible that the vegans couldn't resist it, and she came down in the morning and found the vegans tucking into it or something, which obviously is a little bollocks, right? But there is this thing about, you know, vegans are, you know, it's kind of a deprivation. And so at any given moment, you know, they're going to cheat. You know, you often get questions about, do you cheat? And then you got Phoebe from, is it Phoebe? Phoebe from Friends.
Phoebe.
Yeah, and Dinah from Superstore. Apparently, those two are positive representations of veganism on the TV, but it's kind of nuanced in the sense that you still get a bit of piss taking going on, but it's not all out attacks and everything, which is quite interesting.
Although interesting, I mean, I don't know most of those, but Phoebe from Friends, her character was a little kind of portrayed as a bit wacky, a bit eccentric, a bit of that kind of hippie that we were talking about earlier.
Hippie,
so you do that kind of person who's a little bit out there, so
kind of ditzy.
And ditzy as well. And
yeah. This one is 2019 research. So meat eaters are full of anxiety, but about not eating animal flesh. And so if a meat eater thinks about giving meat up, it's a very anxious time for them, according to this research, because they're going to disrupt all their social conventions. They're going to disrupt they're going to take them out of their comfort zone and all that kind of stuff. So there are two strategies for non-vegans to avoid all that, and one of them is stay away from vegans. So you're not going to get contaminated. And even don't.
Yeah, it's catching, right? It's catching.
Yeah,
only.
Don't do anything vegan-like. Don't do anything that's going to suggest that you might be thinking about it or something like that. I mean, this doesn't chime too well with me in the sense that there's a lot of people who are quite openly kind of vegan curious on the street, at least, and they don't seem to be that bothered about it. But the research is suggesting this. And this is the faunalytics thing, which is the bit I mentioned about the anxiety stuff. So the first column of numbers is former vegetarians and vegans, and the second column is current vegetarians and vegans. And so if you look at the taste bit right at the bottom, for example, it suggests that 9% of vegans or vegetarians have cravings about eating chickens and turkeys, or they have cravings about eating cows and pigs, or so-called seafood, you know. And if you look, the first column, the numbers are always higher than the second column. We should expect, because those are the people who gave up because of those reasons. Whereas, in some senses, the second column are the people who are kind of under threat of falling off the wagon. But then there is that caveat at the side, which I've got my camera in front of it, so I'm not sure if I can read it. Basically says we've got to be careful about the self-reporting from former vegans, because they might exaggerate things in order to justify their status, you know, as former vegans. What former vegans do, in my experience, they don't come across as very authentic people, because it's not as though, well, there is one or two that have said, you know, I've had to go back and eat X, and I have as few as possible, and I'm not going to have anything else, and this kind of stuff. But most of them just go back to eating flesh and secretions, and quite happily, as though this kind of alleged medical reason, whatever it is, that is supposed to have stopped them being plant-based, just kind of said, okay, well, I don't have to bother now, which obviously means that they probably weren't vegan in the first place. You know, so I did not see veganism as part of my identity. Insufficient interaction with other vegans, all of these things. I'm not actively involved in a vegan group or organization. I dislike. This is the second one down. I dislike that my vegan vegetarian diet made me stick out, or makes me stick out from the crowd. So there's 41% of current vegans or current vegetarians, vegans, who are suggesting that one of the things that they dislike most about what they're doing is the fact that they're sticking out like a sore thumb. Now, when we complain about the cupcake vegans and the inactive vegans, these must be the ones, because I'm assuming that that's not necessarily going to be a feature of activist vegans. Or maybe I'm wrong. What do you think? Could activist vegans be both? They don't like sticking out at the same time they're activists.
No. I think that the moment, or the people who decide to go active have made their peace with the fact that they are going against the norm in a very vocal way. So I don't think that this could represent activists, this percentage. But I'm thinking that we stop people in the street when we do outreach, and let's say we stop a young person, we have the footage, we have the arguments, we present them with our moral arguments, and they may decide that what they've been doing until then it's wrong, and the next day they go vegan. Or maybe they have seen something, documentary, something on social media. What I'm thinking is that person at this moment do not really realize is that this is a social movement, social justice movement, and veganism is a philosophy. I think that for many people, the first reaction is, oh, I was hurting someone, and I realized it, and I'm stopping hurting someone, in this case, other animals. So I'm thinking that if these persons go back home and there is reaction from the family, the reaction from peers, it's very easy for them to feel very isolated, really alone. And one way to cope with that, it would be to go, to stay silent, so they don't have to deal all the time with the comments or the jokes or whatever. And I'm thinking that this is a reality for many people that we should not, forget. I mean, at some point, people realize, or they get to veganism through animal rights, or at some point they realize that have entered a movement, and that they abide to the philosophy and everything. But at the beginning, for many people, it's not like that.
I think there's a lot in what you've said, especially that bit about returning back into cultural speciesism, because I think that's one of the main reasons why people started to question the claims that we're making about the AV tally thing that was very strong about 3 years ago about, we've created X amount and all this kind of stuff. And then I think they realized that wasn't the case. And so it's because of that reason that they might be all kind of fired up and quite determined even on the street with you, but then they have to return and get,
What I've noticed several times, you get, a group of young persons, you have the conversation with them, they leave, they may be interested or dismissive or whatever, they leave, and then one person returns alone. And I've witnessed that several times. To me, that means that this person usually it's a person more interested in what you have to say, and they want more information or, resources, etc. And that says that this person do not feel comfortable in front of their friends or peers, whatever they are, to ask more questions or to express an interest to what you're saying.
Yeah, the group was stopping it, and so they had to separate themselves from the group.
Yes, and I've witnessed that several times. It's quite often.
Yeah, I think I've seen that. We've certainly seen that on the street in Dublin. You get a group coming up, and then somebody will kind of sidle back, just to get a few things and stuff, and kind of almost like furtively almost, don't tell my mates type attitude, which is quite interesting.
The interesting fact is that this person will have to deal with these people the next day and the day after that if they go vegan.
Yes, that's right. And so that's what I mean. They're breaking their conventions, and they're potentially putting their friendships that they presumably cherish or at least are interested in at risk. And I think that people kind of very quickly latch on to, well, if I'm going to do that, then these are going to be the consequences.
I think the majority of people are always going to be quite conservative in their behavior, aren't they? They're always going to be, as long as the majority of people are doing that, I'll be all right doing that, and I'm not going to swim against the tide. And I think people's personalities generally fit with that. I think you find most, like, people here, I was on the panel, people in the chat, people that we know are activists, and a lot of vegans will be people who have kind of, like we said earlier, come to terms with swimming against the tide and going against the norms. But the majority of people, I feel, they're just not ready to do that, or they're not prepared to do that. They don't want to do that. So they're never going to become vegan until vegan becomes more normalized. And so what if veganism was the norm? They'd be happy to kind of go with the norm, because it's that social conformity that I think drives the majority of people. They just don't want to stand out. And whatever that's going to be a problem, they just will not put themselves into that position. That's what I feel is in human nature. It just seems to be that way. And I think we'll find most of us have been, if we look back at people here and us, if we look back in our lives, we've probably taken other measures where we stand out, where we maybe didn't fit in with the crowd, where we went against the tide in other ways other than veganism. And I feel that seems to be true with people who are activists.
Yeah, I think that, I've said this before, there is a philosopher called David DeGrazier, and he says that it takes a certain independence of mind to swim against the tide, like a vegan. And so I think there is some truth in that, although it does play into, oh, you vegans, you think you're morally superior and you're special and all that kind of stuff, which that bit I don't like, obviously. But I can understand the point that he's making, in the sense that there are some people who are really squashed down by the people around them and their culture or their family, and their relationships, and they don't have much kind of wiggle room at all. And there's just no space for them to think almost about things like veganism. Wendy, could you put up Jonah's comment about analytics again? Because, correct me if I'm wrong, Wendy's just done a brilliant podcast with Corey Lee Wren. And I've listened to it once. I'm definitely going to listen to it again. It's really, really good. But I think she was saying that analytics, or at least this kind of research, can be a bit dodgy as well, didn't she? Or I'm not quite sure whether she picked them out, but she was saying that there's a bit of a research industry within the movement, and they're all kind of
linked together. Yeah, she was saying because she's critiquing professionalization of organizations, particularly like big nonprofits. And she was saying sometimes even, sort of data like analytics will be done by the people who've maybe been part of that organization, or, there'll be links in some way. She didn't kind of critique them fully. She was just kind of saying sometimes you have to be aware that there are links with these organizations and the research data. So it's not always completely removed and objective. There might be other things going on or agendas.
Well, sometimes not completely, but sometimes not at all. I mean, animal charities evaluators come to mind. That there's an incredible couple of videos by that group called Shark, which is all in capital letters, Shark, and they look at ACE, animal charities evaluators, and they just saw it as a cartel. It was their mates essentially who was getting all the rewards all the time, So. Yeah. Anyway, back to this, I guess. This is about the silent vegans, basically saying that they come up with stigma coping strategies. So they know that they're going to get some stick for being vegan, and so they remain silent. So they remain silent completely, and to the extent that some of them will conceal the fact that they're vegans from other people, or just come up with a different form of words. And we hear quite a lot from activists that they've got their own reasons for not using the dread V word. And so obviously the the vegans who are not so sure of themselves also come up with ideas as well. This is about face-saving strategies. Like, for example, if you are going to end up having to talk about your veganism to people, you kind of wait for the right time. And obviously this feeds into ideas about sophisticated communication things. There's no point in talking about animal products at the dinner table, that kind of idea. But a lot of vegans say that they try to avoid confrontation. And so instead of talking about their ethics, which they do feel, this is where they decide not to do that. So they say, it's just a personal choice, and it's for a selfish reason, And as it says here, this dilutes the ethics of veganism. And so, not surprisingly, the non-vegans in this scenario, they love this because it kind of gets them immediately off any kind of moral hooks. So if they did start making moral points, which presumably they're preventing themselves from doing, this is the interesting part. If they didn't make moral points, that would then make everything very uncomfortable for both of them. And so that's the reason why they're doing it. The vegans are trying to prevent themselves and the non-vegan feeling attacked or alienated, it says. Here's another version of how vegans can be silenced, which is really interesting. This is some research which used the ASH experiment. They're kind of conforming to group norms type ideas, and so they had an experiment where they had this thing about a petition to ask a supermarket to increase the amount of vegan products or vegan-friendly products. And if they approached vegans to sign that petition, then the acceptance rate was 80% up to 100%. Everybody, or the vast majority, were quite happy to do it. However, when they were with non-vegans, and they thought it's gonna make it difficult, then it drops down to about 50% or 52%. Because again, they're kind of self-limiting themselves in front of in front of their friends or whatever, in order not to upset them, and so they refuse to sign a petition that they wouldn't normally sign quite happily if there was no non-vegans there. I hope I make sense of that, because it's a little bit complicated.
I think people's the drive to conform is really strong, isn't it, in humans? Really strong. Because I think it's motivated by that kind of survival, isn't it? Like, if you're out of the group, you're an outcast. You basically risk starvation, death. It's that real drive to be part of a group, part of society, because we all rely on each other for survival. So I think it's a really strong driver. Conformity.
Yeah, it's a social animal thing, isn't it? A social animal thing. Yeah. Because there's a twist in this one. This is research from 2001 again. This is about self-silencing. And this is where you see the title is really interesting. How do you know someone's vegan? They won't always tell you. And that kind of gives the lie to that joke that goes on. That there is a lot of vegans who won't say to people that they're vegan. And that they'll even avoid the word for a variety of reasons. So this kind of joke that goes around and has been going around for years and years is really quite a stereotype, which isn't accurate amongst all vegans, certainly. The research is suggesting that if the vegans self-silence themselves, the danger there is that it makes the vegan movement look smaller, and so people think of it as less significant and less worthy of giving some thought to. So this self-silencing is quite bad for the cause, as well as anything else. And then there's a twist to the petition thing here. It says that, so you got this scenario that the vegans will say yes to the petition, but if the non-vegans there, they'll say no, and then the non-vegans are quite reluctant to, or not interested in signing it. But if the experimenter endorses the signing of the petition, then more of the non-vegans will then do it. So this is very similar to the kind of Stanley Milgram type stuff, the experiment, the authority experiment, where if you've got a person in authority giving you the kind of go ahead or stopping you doing something, that's really kind of meaningful. And it's almost like the patheticness of humans in a sense, because we don't need much to be going on to really seriously influence our decisions, and an authority figure plays a big part in it. So that's quite interesting there. Moving to the end now, this is about infighting. And so this is between vegetarians and vegans, this research was looking at. Veggies are intimidated by being around vegans. Their anxiety levels go up, and so they self-police themselves more. And the result of all that is a lot of tension. And so they kind of put themselves under a lot of surveillance when they're around vegans, because they think the vegans are kind of watching them, see if they're going to make a mistake, almost. Then you got this issue about, this is Reddit again. Obviously, we know this in the movement, the activist movement. We want the silent vegans to stop being silent. Here it says right at the end, please do not let the flesh eaters silence you. But the responses to it are really interesting, because one person, this is 4 years old, this research, by the way, so it could be a bit dated now, so it could be criticized for that. My verbal communication skills aren't as good as I would like them to be able to debate omnivores. I just try to positively talk about vegan food. And so, how frustrating is that kind of thing? That they'll talk about the vegan food, but they won't talk about the ethics because they're not confident enough. And same here. Even though I have all the knowledge in my brain, the second someone asks me some difficult question, my camera's in the way again, my mind goes blank. So there's that kind of thing. It's not just about cowardice and then complaining about being hectored by the idea that you should be vocal. And then somebody else, same. I'm trying to study this as much as I can and watch YouTube videos of people debating, because I'm so very, very bad at remembering things and presenting facts. And this plays into that thing that goes on about, the praise that people like Earthling Ed and the Joeys of the world, and even the, can I say the word? The Garys of the world, they get a lot of praise because they're able to do it, And also, I get this, if they are able to do it and remain calm as well. When I did that TV show last year, people contacted me and said, how did you remain so calm? I would have jumped across the table and slapped the bitch kind of thing, talking about the female dairy farmer. And I was just going, well, where's the education potential in that, And so I suppose it really down to the fact that some people don't feel able on lots of different levels to be able to do it. And I think on some level we've got to accept that there are some people who just can't do it.
I know a few people like this who very much fit into the quite vegan category, for want of a better word. They definitely are long-term, dedicated, committed vegans, but they don't really speak up. And I think it's a personality thing, definitely. And also I think over the years there's been so much confrontation, this whole that being mocked, being put on the spot at work dues, like you go to a work do and basically everyone there is questioning you, quizzing you, why are you vegan, and then mocking you, laughing, making all these jokes that we've been talking about. And I think it's just sometimes to avoid those confrontational situations, avoid being humiliated in public or having to justify yourself, that often they just stay quiet just for a quiet life and not to be in those difficult situations because they just feel too embarrassed, too humiliated or whatever. So there are definitely people like that, or maybe it's not just there are people like that. There are people, all of us maybe could be like that in different situations. That's another thing. I think each context and situation can bring different things out of us. There are times when I probably have kept quiet, and other times when I've been really vocal. I'm not always the same in every situation. I suppose you kind of assess the situation, who you're with. Is this battle worth my energy, or shall I just zip it and it's not worth it? It's not worth getting into aggro, I suppose.
Yeah, it's
context,
kind of
isn't it?
paying the price kind of thing, because it's a kind of price that we have to pay, isn't it? I mean, the more vocal and out there that you want to become, the more you're kind of making yourself a target in that sense. So yeah. Oh, apologies to everybody about the sexist language before, but that was a direct quote that I said before, but not necessarily a great one. We're almost to the end now. I'm not going to read this out. Again, this is saying that the silent vegans, again, make the vegan look smaller than it is. And the solutions put forward, this is right at the end of the paper, are kind of social ones about the idea of people seeing each other as allies and supportive of each other, kind of community. And this is the last one, which is basically the same kind of thing. Let me see what I was going to say about it, because so social support will encourage people to be more vocal if we're able to give it, I think you're saying. And basically kind of concluding that movement members should or could be more understanding about other movement members. And I think in this sense, you can see the sense of the conclusion. So rather than, as it were, hectoring them, to use the word in those responses, it's a question of trying to encourage them. And so I suppose it's see, I know it's very frustrating for the activists to have so many vegans out there who don't, as it were, do anything from their point of view. But how do you get them to move from the one to the other? That's the question. And what they're saying here is, don't shout at them, encourage them. Be friendly and matey and all that. And I suppose the Greece 22 thing is a good example, Nella, isn't it, of that kind of supportive environment that seems to be created in order to kind of jolly people along, kind of thing.
Yes, because it solved two problems. One was some kind of providing people with some kind of network. So even if they feel alone, they know other vegans and they can get in touch and vent, or I don't know, go out for a drink, whatever, the social thing. And also they get all this knowledge that allows them to properly answer questions non-vegans pose, even really mean-spirited questions. You have all the information, so you'll be able to answer more or less. But we would like everyone to go vegan, and then all these silent vegans to be vocal ones. But every time we see a silent vegan, we don't know what are they dealing with in relation to veganism, how they've been treated by their environment, and we don't know what other things are going on in their lives. There are many factors that can make a person silent. Think, for example, a woman living in a situation of domestic abuse, and they they want to be vegan, or they are vegan, or they don't want to cook for the other person, but they have to. And sometimes we're really quick to jump and say, no, cooking other animals' bodies is wrong. Of course, it's wrong in my opinion, but always have to keep in mind the situation of the other person. They are not all as free as we are to make choices.
No, but also I think we ought to think about the numbers here, Nella, because the criminological research, especially the feminist-inspired one, is suggesting that we talk about large numbers, large percentage of people, mainly women, of course, who are in that domestic violence situation. So we can't just dismiss it in that sense, because it is a major problem, because it's a major food has always been a major form of social control. But
yes, I meant that we should not attack that person, because I've seen this happening in social media.
I know, and that's right. Yeah, I'm saying the same, and we should realize their predicament that they're in. I mean, I know that, I was brought up in Yorkshire, which is a very kind of patriarchal society. And it was the norm.
Me too.
Yeah, but it was a norm when I was a kid. I don't know about you, Nella, but it was always the case that the food had to be ready when the guy got home from work, regardless of when he got home, whether it was early or late or anything. It had to be kind of ready. And if he didn't like it, he would literally throw it on the wall, and that was seen as kind of normal kind of behavior in those days. That's quite everybody.
Whereas, no, just like, didn't have food thrown at the wall, but it was definitely that. The woman is at home cooking the tea, is at home ready for the kids to come home from school, dinner on the table, and I remember when my just talking about like that whole kind of oppressive attitude when my nan died and my granddad was kind of left. He didn't know how to cook for himself. So my mum used to make all my granddad's dinners, meat and 2 veg, and walk them around to his house. We used to call her Meals on Legs. So Meals on Wheels, because she used to walk them around. She lived around the corner. But it was that thing that it was just accepted. My granddad went out to his job. My nan was the homemaker and all that. And then, same with my mum. So it's funny, isn't it? That whole...
It was the same here. The woman was expected to do the cleaning and the cooking and everything, even the women that had jobs. But thankfully, it was not my home. And I remember people getting really impressed when they realized that my father knew how to cook, and he used to cook for us, for example, or do other stuff, knew how to iron a shirt, for example. And they were looking at him like he'd done something extraordinary, and possibly make fun of him behind his back. Not that he cared, though.
Yeah.
But that's something that I think plays into people's attitudes and being vegan, being silent or vocal or whatever, where we grew up, how we grew up. I assume that it's much easier for me to be vocal when I grew up in a household where being vocal was the normal thing to do about whatever injustice. And
our upbringing plays a big part, isn't it?
It's okay to be vocal.
Our upbringing plays a big part. If you haven't been empowered to be vocal, that might be a big journey for you. Me, definitely been on that one. It's really, because every single one of us has had a very different experience, very different filters, different programming, different sort of mindset. And so you can only be who you are in each situation. And we tend to compare ourselves to each other all the time. And, I should be doing that. I should be doing this, or I should be more like this. But actually, all of us are very unique, and no one will ever have the same physical body, physical experiences, emotional experiences, and that kind of blueprint is only ever going to be used once by each of us. So we'll have very different ways of expressing and ways we're going to see things and look at things and be able to do things as well.
And even if it's easy for some person to be vocal or do what they think they need to do and do activism and whatever, it doesn't mean that along the way, from the moment they went vegan, they didn't have to face painful situations. For example, the most painful thing for me, because everything else was easy, is that I started feeling different about really good friends. So I had these people that we've grown up together, and they were at some point they were like brothers and sisters for me, and my feelings started to change after a while, and that was a painful thing to go through. The fact that that they never go vegan, they never went vegan, although we have the discussions, make me think less of them. That's my naked truth. I understand why people do not go vegan. I understand all these forces that enable people to oppress other animals, but deep down I feel less of them. I think less of them. and that affected my feelings too.
I think it's really hard not to have that, isn't it? I feel the same sometimes. It's really, I think it's that constant straddling of that kind of that challenge of, you have these people in your life who you care for and you love, your family, your friends, whoever, but then there's that constant looking at them differently, because it's like you're the oppressors that I'm standing up against every day. You're complicit in the oppression I'm fighting. You're part of your behavior is everything that I abhor and I'm trying to change in the world. And it's a real paradox every single day. I think that's part of the difficulty of being a vegan, isn't it, in a non-vegan world, is trying to have that empathy for the oppressors who are your friends and family, whilst trying to change their minds.
I think it's one of the most difficult things. I mean, it just goes to show, and I think a lot of this research that we've gone through goes to show that we are social animals, and it means a lot to us, that kind of status. And so, to isolate oneself is quite difficult. I mean, so it's interesting though that they kind of choose silence rather than isolation. So the being in a social group is so powerful that they will silence themselves about their veganism. But of course, some of us won't do that. And I think some of us probably have difficulty understanding the people who will do it, I suppose.
And I guess it's important to create vegan spaces where people can be themselves, even the ones that are silent. Maybe this will help them feel better, or not being silent. I mean, places where people are not judged, because it's really empowering to get to know other vegans, and especially if you are lucky enough to have vegan friends. It's very powerful and very empowering, and makes life a lot easier.
Do we think that the pandemic helped to some degree in that respect? Because, I mean, you remember when all the lockdowns started, we all piled in online and there was loads of conferences and that kind of stuff. It must have brought people into albeit virtual, a vegan community that they've never experienced before. And, is there a danger now that with everybody kind of going back to normal, the new normal, that and that those events are kind of lessening, as it were, that's going to take those kind of people back into a lonely space? Because, maybe the internet became their new kind of family, or at least their family enabler. I wonder what people think about that.
I feel that most of my friends are through online now.
Michael says the same. It's really interesting, isn't it? For all its ills, and yeah, I mean, we all complain about it, but I remember thinking it was great. It was great during the first weeks of the lockdown, I thought, because suddenly there's all these conferences that you could go to almost like on a daily basis, and you really felt involved and learning and getting involved with stuff, and
we'll just have to make sure that virtually.
Me and Roger are playing little tag. I'll put it on, takes it off. No, so Deb's saying she thinks that COVID strengthened the vegan community, and maybe I think over this last year it feels like that. But I suppose it's almost kind of two sides of the same coin in a way, in that it has strengthened it on one hand, but there's also been a lot more infighting and toxicity on the other. Maybe both of those things have been highlighted, have increased. And I just wonder, I don't know, sorry, did I just interrupt you, Nella, with that? Sorry if I did. I didn't mean to. I just wonder if you think that with these internal conflicts that we get within the vegan space, I just wonder if it's just a thought occurred to me early with reading the article, is that the writer was saying that when we have like internal conflicts, it can really affect the social movement, because it's basically we're not showing that we can deal with a very large scale social problem. But then I wonder, is it the fact that it is such a huge social problem that drives us to fight internally, because we look out and feel that it's too big and it's too overwhelming, and we feel powerless, and we feel like no matter what we're doing, more and more other animals are being slaughtered and enslaved and used and everything every single day. And every day we've got our social media feed showing us more and more of what's going on. And here comes Brian, by the way. And then so we kind of almost get this overwhelm of being powerless and hopeless and full of despair. And I wonder if that makes us turn inward more. Like we look out and think, oh, this is hopeless. So we turn in and we start to almost choose battles that maybe seem more winnable within the movement. They're smaller, more winnable. And also we're kind of maybe trying to think, well, we need to be more perfect within before we can change the world. And I wonder if that's part of the infighting, that we look out and it's too much, too big.
Maybe it could be. I mean, that's to quote Tom Reagan, that's a very difficult question. I think it's multifaceted, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, because the point is, we all want the movement to do the best, you know, what's best all the time. But exactly what that is, we're struggling with. And we struggle with that as individuals, but we struggle with that as groups. And I suppose when you see people kind of wasting time, or in my case, since the 80s, I see, you know, the national system wasting a lot of the movement's money. That's always infuriated me, because I always had a plan to spend that money elsewhere. It's not as though it was just infuriating because it was happening. It was because it was happening, but also what could have replaced it had never happened, which is the development of the grassroots. And so that's always been, so I'm kind of in favor of movement infighting, except you would have to call it reflexive discourse. You wouldn't call it infighting. But I mean, the problem is we're not very good at talking to each other. I mean, just as a lot of vegans say that they can't talk to the public, well, what's to say that we can't talk to each other as well? You know, I mean, we're not good at it. We're not good at putting the nuances of points over, and you know, trying to do it in the way we're doing it now is probably not the best. You know, I mean, we're social animals, as we say. You know, body language. I mean, we can see each other, but it's still not the same. You know.
Yeah, it's very different, isn't it? So maybe. Yeah, because I think sometimes if we were actually round a table or face to face with each other, we wouldn't say half the things that we might see online in some of those threads that we get. It might be a more open, understanding, you know, effective communication between people. We might actually get more resolved. You might get, you still air your differences and your assessments and critiques, but you wouldn't maybe get so nasty and mean with each other.
Yeah,
that's maybe one thing to be said for face to face, isn't it?
Yeah, people seem to go to mean level fairly quickly, don't they? I'm a bit conscious of the time, but I did see this one coming up from Ronnie a little while ago. I'm not quite sure if you've seen the presentation that we've just had, Ronnie, but that kind of answers that in a way, because
Ronnie's homework is to go back, watch the episode, watch the presentation, take notes. And we'll be doing a little exam next week, Ronnie.
Yeah. I think that in most cases, vegans do not want to spend time with non-vegans if they have a choice. I mean, if their only choice is with someone non-vegan or completely alone, they may feel the need to, to be with another human being and seek the company of a non-vegan. And I think that also this happens progressively. I mean, I remember that during my first year, I'm sorry, I have a cold. My first year as a vegan, I was more willing to be with non-vegans, for example. Progressively, I found it very difficult to be around them. And now I do it only if I absolutely have to.
Yes, I can understand all that, and but you know that the phrase you used at the beginning of this, I think, Nella, was significant other. I mean, you know, again, we've got to take that into account. You know, some people have got, you know, significant and deep relationships with non-vegans, and their non-veganism makes it worse and worse. So if you've got a good, I mean, going back to Ronnie's situation, I mean, Ronnie's in a relationship with another vegan. who's also another vegan activist. Perfect situation. So
there've been several comments about that. I think one was from Dave, and I think he mentioned that when he first went vegan, he went out with someone who was not vegan, but now he could not think of doing it. A lot of things happen progressively.
I think we evolve, don't we? Our boundaries change as we evolve as vegans, I think.
And also depends a lot of what opportunities one have. I mean, if they're living in a city where there are very few vegans, it would be much more difficult for them to meet vegan people.
Vegan people, I like it.
Vegan people, the vegan people.
People. Brian is really staring at me now because he's hungry.
It's that time, isn't it? It's that time to go. We always know when it's time to go because Brian comes and tells us.
He tells us, it's like, yeah, you lot.
He's like one of those doorkeepers, isn't it? Okay, lads, we're finished now.
Oh, lots of love for Brian. Hugs for Brian. I can put all Brian's comments up now.
From a dog as well.
Oh, I don't know how Brian would feel about that, but hug from a dog. So are we? Oh, thanks, Michael.
Well, Brian wouldn't mind that too much, but that's going back to, it's difficult, the idea of having a relationship, intimate relationship with a non-vegan. I would think, and of course, there are a lot of them, and I can't pretend to know how they work really.
I don't know either, but it must be really difficult being in a relationship with someone that has different values of you. It's bound to cause some serious problems.
Yes, I think that's inevitable, isn't it? Inevitable. Right, so thank you everyone for tuning in. I think we're about to go. When Wendy's doing a rant this week off camera.
No. I think she's trying to sort the cuts.
Brian's new food regime. It's very complicated.
Well, Wendy, I've got a special treat for you, because if you look down below the screen, you'll see that blue. You see the blue box there. If you look down below the screen, you'll see you'll see five boxes, and one of them is like light blue.
Okay.
If you hover over that, it'll say add to stream, and if you click on that, then that's the end credit. So you'll be able to finish the show today.
I'm well excited. I'm so easy to please, honestly. This is how I get through life, is I find really simple things very pleasing. Like ending the show. Excellent. So I press that, and then I do the end broadcast afterwards.
Yeah, that's right. And you'll get a second one, so you got to end it twice. So just be aware of that. Yeah. Okay, otherwise, we'll be doing that thing that we did the other day, where we're just hanging around.
The marathon, the marathon of shows. Oh, thanks to everyone's comments in the chat. I thought he was having a seizure. Dave says he thought it was having a seizure. Yeah, Brian's food is, as a diabetic, is very complicated, and he's very fussy. But yeah, thanks everyone. Thanks, Nadia. Oh, it's Nella, top of the munch.
Oh, doesn't matter.
I'm sure she's been called worse. No, thanks everyone. So I will go to the end credits then. I'm very excited about this. I'm going to press the blue button. Woo! Are you ready? Is everyone ready to go?
You just giggle while you're doing it.
Brace yourselves.
That's what I normally do. Yeah. So yeah, this was a really interesting chat, wasn't it? But thanks everyone, and thank you to you, my fellow team, and I'll see you next week. Oh, it's not working, Roger. It's not working, Roger.
Can't you do
it's
it?
not working. It's not working.
Okay.
The blue button's not working. Oh, there it goes. Or did you do it? Didn't flipping work?